Tigana is a 1990 book by Gavriel. It's one of his first forays into fantasy. This aims to be a spoiler-free look at Tigana, the book, in the hopes that I can encourage you to read it, given that it is quite lauded in the fantasy sphere, even though I have some issues with it, mostly due to its genre and time of writing. I think reading it as a modern reader. Let's start with the plot. It centres on, initially, Devon. And Devon is a minstrel in a singing or musical troupe. And they travel around the country performing at various venues. And in this case, at the start, they are bidding to be the performers at a memorial service, a funeral of the local, king, leader, called Sandri Dastabar. After performing at this memorial service, they gain even more notoriety and fame, as Devon's voice is really seen as something quite special, and the group hangs together on this. Well, this opening part of the book really takes the idea of music and using music as a way to explore and kind of draw out the excitement in this world and the beauty of this world, because Tigana, the book, is set in a world that is almost certainly Mediterranean. A lot of the language is Italian and based on Italy, but I sort of get like a broader, more Mediterranean, Caribbean feel from the world. So while the world builds this idea of music and beauty and nature and birds and wildlife, etc., it takes a turn a couple of chapters in. A turn of events happens, and the book turns from being this exploration of culture and of music and of the world to being a plot to assassinate or get rid of not just one but two tyrants that rule over various parts of the nation. It's kind of a shocking twist that comes in there with some serious events, and we get characters new and old that are brought together in this quest, and the reasons for doing so are kind of outlined within the story. Now, one of the inspirations from the afterword in Tigana is actually from a countryman of mine called Brian Friel. Gavriel K says that Brian Friel's translations played a big part in his motivations for the story, and translations really focused on this idea that we had an Irish population, an indigenous population, that were forced to take on anglicised versions of their towns, of their places, and how that created a disconnect for them. Now, this is something that even people living here now can identify with. It's still a source of some political and cultural unrest that just won't go away, because certainly places, names and things are important to people. They give people a sense of ownership, and they give them a sense of nostalgic belonging. And one of the key themes of the book is about this belonging and of memory and about how important. One of the real challenges I think that Kay has is getting you, the reader, to believe in nostalgia or believe that these things are actually important. He does this in a number of ways. He does it through people and he does it through place. Basically, the story revolves around one of these tyrants. He has assuaged or gotten rid of the memory of a place. Even if it's said Tigana, then anybody not from that place originally will not hear the word Tigana. By magic or sorcery, they don't hear it. And only the people who came from Tigana can hear the word spoken. So the idea is that within a generation or two, Tigana as an idea will have died out, and the memory of that place will be gone and replaced with what is now the lower court. So Kay has a job in convincing us, like I say, that this is important, and the idea of righting a wrong in this case and restoring this place to its former glory or former name, it goes in hand to hand with the independence and getting rid of the tyrant who's ruling over the land. It speaks to something much more deep and meaningful. There's a melancholy and a sadness that goes along with this memory of a place that once was, of people that once were, and of places and stature that people would have that they can no longer talk about. And in doing this, he brings together, he uses the found family trope. We've got these disparate set of people that are joined by a common goal. Some cases they need to coerce and bring people into that common goal, because people see the power of the tyrants, they see the power of the world, and are not quite as willing to rock the boat on it. You have the people with the long-standing view and knowledge of what this is, the people that are revelations to, and It's very hard for you as the viewer to initially see the connect between these things, but ultimately that's what the length and breadth of the book is about. It's broken into 5 parts, and each of them has a kind of idea behind it. It looks at the motivations of various people. Now, I think one of the detractions about the book is the fact that it feels very sprawled, very laid out, and in some ways I'd say it sags in the middle because of this, because it kind of goes and tries to ensure you, the reader, sees and understands a lot of the motivations of the people within here, and about how different people go about achieving their goals, because not everybody has exactly the same plan at the start. There are people with disparate ideas, and even later on in the book where people, the motivations become clear, etc., it is still questioned as whether that was the right thing to do or whether it should have been done another way. And that brings us a lot to the characters. So the characters in the book, I think, is a fairly mixed bag, and interestingly enough, I think there's a real split between the male characters and the female characters. By and large, the male characters are one note. They have a singular goal or a singular drive, and they know what it is that drives them. They know what it is that pushes their buttons. They know what the things are that motivate them. The female characters, on the other hand, are usually a bit more diverse, and they're where the real interest lies, and I think where the unsettled nature of it could go this way, it could go that way, feel comes from. Catriona, Anais, and especially Dianora are 3 characters that are definitely, there's more play with them. I think that we delve more into their individual character, and I think actually Kay puts more words into describing their conflict and their inner turmoil. I think especially Dianora's character, she is with Brandon, and she is caught in a situation where she's literally caught between the rock and the hard place of her own motivations and actually what her mind and what her position and place is telling her. She sets out with a goal, and it gets confused somewhere along the way. She is a really interesting character, right from her genesis at the start, right through to her resolution at the end. I think hers is the most poignant and beautiful story, and one that I think really works well. Catriona's is a bit more difficult, I think, because actually some of the resolutions, and again one of the criticisms it have is that some of the resolutions of the story I don't think are well earned. I think, for instance, let's talk about the magic system. It's a very soft magic system in the book. For most of the book there's only real fleeting glimpses of what the magic is or how it appears. The 2 tyrants are both wield magic, and we see again very very brief glimpses of their power. It's only towards the end that this kind of ramps up, but even then it's not really explained, to the point that some of the characters, a lot of the characters, don't even understand how this magic works themselves. So it gives Kay the opportunity to kind of do some gotcha, reveals of how things work, because it was never clearly explained, and I think that could have been tighter. It also speaks to my mind that this probably should and was planned to be at least a duology. There are characters and places that are put in here that seem like there's a genesis of an idea there. Like there's a vampire woman brought in here. There's another kind of subset of magic. There are all these things that are briefly introduced but don't really go anywhere with it. And it maybe speaks to the idea that maybe this was going to be developed, or that this was going to form part of another branch or offshoot of the series. Like I say, I think it, to me, reads like it's supposed to be a geology, that we would develop some of these facets of these kind of side characters and bring them to the fore even more. So this split of male and female characters, the male characters of Baird, Devon, Alison, you're made to question actually what their motivations, because they're so one note, I think, in one way, is that motivation enough for them? Is it enough to do the things and change the character of themselves? The things that the people that they appear to be at the start and the people they are at the end. Does this singular drive explain a lot of their actions and motives? And that for me seems a bit, awkward in places. It would also be a bit remiss for me to kind of not mention the fact that there's some detailed sex scenes in the book. I was caught in a kind of weird situation of scanning, reading over those kind of bits, and then realising that, well, in Kay's part, he decided to put a bit of narrative alongside what was happening there. So I kind of couldn't totally tune out, but I was still trying to tune in, and I got to a point where one of the characters was in grave pain, and I was like, well, how did that happen? And what actually happened then was I had to read it in minute detail. That I actually learnt my lesson, that actually trying to gloss over the smut didn't really pay off, and I had to go back through it and read it in minute detail to make sure I caught what was going on, because K, for the use of this, it actually does have a narrative payoff. It actually has a narrative purpose, and it's not just there for titillation or otherwise. I think those elements of the story are needed in order to create some of the motivation that are in there to kind of help this along, even though it kind of don't think it quite gets there. So Tigana for me was a 4-star book, and I did say in my review of it on Goodreads that's possibly a bit harsh, because the bit that sings out to me throughout anything else in this book is actually how beautifully it's written. Kay's prose is otherworldly good. It's just kind of stunning from start to finish. The amount of times that I've highlighted pieces of text in the book, especially those bits that talk about emotions with song, with nature, with the environment around them, all creating a maelstrom together. It's just utterly beautiful, and it is quite possibly one of the best written books that I've ever read. And for that reason, it's maybe disappointing or maybe a bit odd that it wasn't a 5-star book, because in terms of beautiful prose, it is right up there with any book that I've ever written. But this sagging bit in the middle, these incredibly long chapters, are a product of the time that it was written, and it's maybe unfair to hold that against it, because obviously, that's what happened when those things were written then. So I do feel that if I was to reread it, this would almost certainly be a 5-star book. I would embrace the long chapters and embrace the richness that comes in the story there, and embrace more of the language and embrace more of the world, because it is truly and utterly beautiful. And it does strike me that Kay is one of those people that if I was to read another book by them, I'd be immediately drawn to the language. The language is what you're going to go there first. The storytelling that comes along there, I mean, there's a very full and rich and satisfying story for me anyway. I really love the end of it. Not everybody seems to, but I think that's the real beauty in writing. If you can get an ending or a story that people find divisive, I think that only creates more discourse and makes it more interesting to go and read, and then read it for yourself and see what you thought of it. So some of this writing really comes into play when you're talking about the real sadness and melancholy of the piece. There's no doubt the how it writes about death, how it writes about relationship, how it writes about how former relationship or nostalgic relationships play us into the present. It's all so beautifully done, and if for no other reason than that, you should check out Tigana. That's my review of Tigana. What did you think of it if you've read it? I'm sure there are very strongly held opinions both ways. If I've missed anything, please let me know. And if you have something else to add, please do. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. And I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.